How are you feeling? Maybe you're feeling great, or maybe you're feeling down, and it may have just started, but it may also be something you recognize every year. That around this time you start to get depressed or just lost all your spark and motivation and get go that you have been cultivating and nurturing since sort of December time, as you started planning for a year ahead and setting goals and you know um, bringing your vision into reality on paper at least, right? And then we had Christmas, which it can be often a downer or an upper depending on your circumstances, and then we get picked up again by New Year's Eve if you follow that calendar, and then that lasts for a little while, and then we hit the mid-November, mid-January into the second half, and then February, all the way till March, till kind of the days become lighter. And this is Northern Hemisphere only, so I'm sorry, this is all I know. And we kind of start to descend into what I'll call here in this video depression, and I'll qualify in a moment kind of what I mean by it, what I don't mean by it. And it's like I say, it's something you recognize as a pattern in you that happens around this time, and or maybe a pattern that happens throughout the year. That's my case. And so in this video, I want to debunk some myths. I want to speak lovingly about depression. I want to offer some tips. I want to offer my take on it. I just want us all to make, well, not just love, but make peace with depression and accept it as part of human experience. I will, like I say, qualify some do's and don'ts in a moment, but that is just my opening. I just want to invite you to join me in this video, which I'm kind of, I feel there is obviously gravitas to that subject. It's very Capricorn, Saturn theme. Saturn is in fact the archetype of depression because it's the archetype of physicality of the matter. Like Saturn is the form, and the form is heavy. And the form, any Saturn transits actually brings into form whatever it's aspecting by any aspect by transit, right? And all of a sudden, and for the first time, we actually see it. Because until then, it's just our internal experience, subjective experience. Saturn transit brings us its manifestation. It's like we are, for the first time, like I say, faced with it. And that can often, well, first it shows the reality of where we are at with that transit, which also can show us actually all that's wrong with it, all that we don't like about it, but we pretended it wasn't there, or we couldn't even see it clearly, right? And that then becomes oppressive and depressive and depressing, right? So there is that to Saturn, but also just like I say, imagine the physicality of it. It's the archetype of, that's how the form gets made. It's like compressing and compressing energy, activity, like, creating density essentially. And density is depression. It's like something heavy pressing on you, and it's only heavy because it's dense, right? So that's just like a little astrological prologue to depression as a topic. And I'll stay with the astrology and human design. I'll bring in that a little bit as well. But it's ultimately, it's ultimately a lived based, as everything is on this channel, like based from my own many decades of living, just living basically, and being a third line and 3-5 profile, which means I experience a trial and error, and I try things and I experiment, and it's all experience, and then what works and how it works, then I share with you guys. So when I say depression, what I'm going to mean in this video, and whenever I speak of it, I don't mean the clinical kind that literally, I've only heard of these kind of depressions. I don't know anyone, or maybe I would if people didn't medicate, maybe I would. I know a couple of, well, maybe more than 2 people in my circle of, people I know and I, have connections with and all that are on medication because they're depressive. But I don't know. I don't know beyond that whether if they weren't on medication, they would be incapacitated in terms of they physically couldn't do anything and like just lie in bed. And I think there is also this other thing called ME. Forgive me, I'm not. There are sort of physical diagnoses around that physical incapacity to bring life force into you, to act on something, because you're just so lethargic and so lifeless, and so much that you literally can't get out of bed. Now that one I'm not talking about. I have never experienced it ever that bad, and yet a version of that, a much milder version of that, I experience weekly, and sometimes weeks turn into months. And like I said, it never gets me down to that extent that I can't get out of bed ever. But I get out of bed because it's like I wanna not fight. Well, yeah, fight it as well. But I want to, like, it's like, what is it? I'm just like, what is it? Why am I feeling like this? So there's always that energy in me, always, 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 always. So that's why it doesn't keep me down in that sense, to that extent. But it's certainly, that only stays in the kind of my mind, or I don't still do anything. I might get out of bed and I do some stuff around the house that absolutely must be done, but beyond that I wouldn't do anything, and I just sit and often cry or journal, or anything else in between, just binge food, Netflix. So that's the kind of depression that I will be talking about. So not the clinical, medical, extreme version of it, because it's never been my experience, and for that I really don't know what to say about it. So that what I'm going to be covering is this other milder version that I'm going to call depression. So hopefully that's not going to offend anyone, or because I don't know how else to call it. Lethargy is definitely something else, and actually there is a term, entropy, which I'll talk about in a moment. Maybe I could use that in future. Let me know what you think. Could anyone get offended if I use depression for the states of, like, just when I don't feel suicidal, but I definitely question what's the point of it? What's the point? Like, there's no point. That kind of. So that's serious. I definitely feel like I'm in the place where it's pretty dark, like bleak. Really bleak, like void of meaning. That's the ultimate bleakness. But like I say, it doesn't keep me bedridden somehow. Okay, enough on that. So I have two line of and they kind of feed into each other. I'm going to start with a lighter version, as I consider it lighter and maybe even easier, certainly in theory easier. And then I'm going to end with the second one, which is what I find is I prefer in theory and as a concept, and as a concept, but also in practice. I say I prefer to work with depression in that way. So I think it's James Hollis. I'm pretty sure it was him who was talking about depression in these terms, which is to say that depression is, he uses the word soul because it's Jungian, and also actually James Hillman is another predecessor to James Hollis. I mean, James Hollis is a Jungian psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, but James Hillman it's not Jungian, but there is the whole, he's very much into the soul piece, James Hillman is. So I think James Hollis, a much younger psychiatrist, uses, I think he's still alive actually, James Hollis, where the others are not. He uses the term soul as well, I'm pretty sure. Or psyche, maybe psyche actually. Okay. Either way, it's that kind of something deeper in us, Pluto, basically. And yeah, every week, every video I mentioned, like I have a couple of really good Pluto videos, so to kind of understand the archetype, what to do with it and how to work with it, a few weeks back. So check them out. But yeah, so depression, according to him, and I like this one, so that's what I mean. And it resonated because I've worked with it before I even heard his definition in that way, probably because it's been adopted by practitioners I worked with to help me with depression, with these states that I'm so apathic, just can't do anything. I'm just so like, nothing, there's no life in me. And he says that it's our psyche or soul that is just, it's like holding us back down, depression, or pulling us down. There is that sense we're way down by something, or we are pulled down by the gravity, right? So something is pulling us down, so holding us back from doing whatever we think we should be doing, because that which we think we should be doing isn't for us, right? And so that got me thinking, so the way I worked with it, without maybe knowing this definition either by him or even in these terms, but in the essence, it's something that we kind of, we have been advised in different forms throughout, last few years or maybe even a decade. Certainly since the internet, I have seen it around. Like it's this kind of idea that unless we are exalted and excited and really happy, that's the only that's the only sign that we should follow. Like, follow your bliss, they say, or follow your aliveness, maybe another thing, follow your desires, your heart's desires. Those are all the sayings that are basically going in the opposite direction of depression. And so if James Hollis is saying that, or rather, not if, but James Hollis seems to be saying the same thing in a way. In a way that depression is the sign that we are doing or trying to do something that was not meant for us. So therefore, we need to find what that other thing is that will lift us out of depression. And I get that, and I have experienced that even without trying, like even without looking necessarily. And that fact that when something that actually lights you up, so there is a list of things you think you should be doing, and then you're depressed because you can't be doing. You're depressed, you don't see the point in doing them, whatever, right? Or being or doing, right? And then something comes along, either you have an idea or something just happens, so you haven't forced it and pushed it, right? That's something else that all of a sudden lights you up, and you all of a sudden are feeling great. Like, completely can't remember why we're feeling depressed, like, and off and doing stuff and blah 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 and feeling excited. So I have experienced that, so I can see why there would be a theory, or psychological theory, if that's the right term, around depression as a way of helping us get out of it. And I think James Hollis, to I don't want to misquote him, and so this is all paraphrasing him and my understanding of it, so I could be wrong. But that's beyond the point. That he's not. I just want to credit him because that's, it's his thing. But not as my way of teaching you. James Hollis is teaching. So in that sense, I feel okay fumbling with his theory. But I think he's talking about also that it's not about denying depression. It's about, because I think what he's saying is that in that in that depression, i.e. psyche's message to us, there is also a message of what the other thing is. What is that we actually want to do, as opposed to what we think we should do, which is actually giving us the depression, right? So that's what he's saying. That's my takeaway. That's how I understood him. And I like that. That's good. But what I eventually, in my later years, as in recently, realized, or rather not realized, but kind of arrived at a kind of like another, I don't know if it's a next level, but it's another stage in this work with my own, like I said, I call it depression, like absolute regular, like, and it can last a long time, or it can, and I'm a functioning depressive. Is that a word? Functioning depressive, like a functioning alcoholic. I'm not. I had a phase, but I'm not. Haven't been in a long time. But no, I wasn't ever. No, I wasn't ever alcoholic. No, I did used to drink 1 year more than ever before or after. But anyway, so functioning depressive, I think, might be the word. So I do consider myself that. And so anyway, so this next stage, right, that I've arrived at, and it's basically almost like making distinguishing, separating mind from the pure energy body. So how did I arrive at this? Via human design. Is a long story short. And so sorry, and also just maybe I should really say, since this is so far still big kind of onus on astrology, even though I will be always talking astrology, but I just want to mention like why I have made peace with my own depression It was again thanks to astrology. So Pluto in Virgo is a big one. Saturn on the ascendant, and for many years I worked with having a Saturn in 12th because I didn't work with whole sign houses, and Saturn in 12th is quite heavy as well. But Moon in Capricorn, Pluto on the south node. So I have a lot of markers of, and a lot of Earth, and Earth is generally depressing because it's heavy, right? It's heavy. It's heaviness, sense of heaviness. And so Pluto in Virgo is particularly, just reading that book that I always recommend, and always with a caveat that I really don't like his style of writing, but that Pluto in Virgo section is well written and full of gold. And it's a major existential dread kind of existence and soul level existence. Anyway, so I found that, so I was like, well, this is my lot, so there's nothing wrong with me, right? This is meant to be mine. So that's what I mean, how I use astrology to help me. So also like look at your Saturn and Capricorn, and I mean, this could be even more complex than I just listed it. So for that, I don't have a video. I don't think I can ever have a video. Depressing markers in a chart. 12th house, 4th house, 8th house, all water houses, earth houses. Not always earth houses, but Saturn, Capricorn, Pluto, like I say. So those are like water houses, and in a natural zodiac, so 12th, 8th, and 6th, and Saturn and Capricorn. So maybe those are just, in a nutshell, the potential depression markers. And so, but this separation between energy and mind was helped to me by, I was helped by with, human design. So that's the difference between human design and astrology. Human design is basically a manual for energetic, manual for our working with our energy body. It has archetypes, it has stories, it's still, humans created it full of language and stories, I get that. But ultimately, we can truly remove all that. We don't need to know any of it and still actually do right by our human design. And that's the magic of human design, where astrology is all story. It's just story, and we are rewriting the story, reframing the story and all that. So, look at all this. Anyway, so in human design, I have two markers, which is gate 60. And in it, I have Mercury, unconscious Mercury, and Mercury is in detriment. And I have Earth in gate 1, which is entropy. So that's, the gate 60 is depression. And gate 1 is entropy. And I have Earth in that particular gate, which is also in detriment. So not only are those two gates, and the gate 1 is particularly significant for me because it's part of my incarnation cross, which is like a really significant part in human design. It's like one's nodes, maybe, is one way of putting it. So not only are those anyway in their shadow expression, like depression and entropy, which is essentially, if you don't know what entropy is, it's when there is no energy for work. And by work, meaning any kind of doing. It doesn't have to be work in terms of going to an office, but any kind of work. And so, okay, so I'm out of the glare. It just was so confusing, disorienting rather. So those two areas in my human design chart are very much about depression, which means I'm only saying this because these are my credentials, right? Why am I an expert in this field? With that caveat I said at the beginning that it's not that clinical kind, at least not in my case. And so what did that teach me? Those two gates have taught me that, being that it's human design, so whenever I study them, they're always described and talked about in terms of energy, and always in the sense that it's essential way of, it's like anything in life, it just has that moment of the dip, like going down as opposed to going up. Everything is a cycle, everything is cyclical, everything changes, nothing stays the same, right? So if we have an up, we will have to have a down. And it was that almost reducing me to a mechanical body, which amongst other things we all are, right? That helped me just remove the mind, which is when you start to beat yourself up, when we start to, and I think that's what depression is. The physical depression, if we didn't feel societal or personal or anything else, right, any other kind of pressure coming from external, some expectations, some things that we should do, that we are, there is no stigma around being like that. I think nobody would, I think, forgive me, like I say, I'm not going into the medicinal end of it, the extreme end of it, but everything I have experienced would absolutely not be an issue if I didn't feel shame around it, if I didn't feel something's really bad and wrong with me. How can I just like feel like this, and then me trying to push myself through that. Of course, when I'm working in a corporate world or 9 to 5 jobs, you have to, which is why so many people, hate work and going to work, because it's, it's all kinds of things. I'm not going to talk about that now, but you kind of have to, because in those instances I had to, and I did push through, and it was awful, because I'm doing something, not only that I'm depressed because I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing, that it's utterly like soul destroying or soul draining or life draining in itself. So therefore I'm depressed about that. But then the depression gets compounded because I shouldn't be feeling like that. It's my job. There's nothing wrong with these people. It's only just a job. It's just like it's like a avalanche of stuff just then falls on you, and you're just so depressed and pressed down on by that heaviness of all ultimately mind, right? All the stories that we tell ourselves around feeling depressed. But when I started to work with it as a physical, pure physical thing, and it's not easy. It is so not easy. I mean, but it's like moments. It's like I spoke in my video, I think it was last week, or not, 2 weeks ago, about how to work through Christmas and dysfunctional family gatherings. It's that even if you get a moment of like just remembering that it's mechanics, it doesn't say anything about you as a person. It's not a personality trait. It's not a character trait, right? It doesn't make you a bad person, right? Or a good person or whatever. It doesn't qualify you. It quantifies you. It's quantity, it's physical. It's like, it's void of story. Then the void, the lifelessness just becomes like, if you go to an art gallery and like a Royal Summer Exhibition at the Royal Academy in London every summer, and it's eclectic. It's like all different artists, so it's not just one style. And some things, therefore, you will love, and other things you will like, oh, what's that? I don't like that. Or you will just leave you indifferent. So it's like that. And it's like just walking, or rather walking, like scanning yourself, experiencing yourself, your state, and it's depressed. It's like that, physically depressed. It's like low. There is nothing. There is no life, and that's entropy. Entropy is, I think, actually a physical term, like in physics used. But I love it. It sounds beautiful. But it's who I am. It's part of who I am. It's part of who we all are. We all have that gate. It's just sometimes defined, sometimes undefined. In both cases, we are feeling it. Absolutely. If anything, it's worse when you're not feeling it, when you're not defined in that gate, 1 or 60. You might be experiencing this more with, greater difficulty. It might be worse for you because it amplifies the experience. But then I would say you're only experiencing that so badly when you are around people who are maybe depressed, because you might be even more depressed but when you're on your own, then you wouldn't have this. Then it's like calm and peace. You're not naturally maybe prone to depression. When in my case, when I have those two things that are specifically depression or entropy, which is the same thing more or less, I have them whether I'm with someone or I'm not. So anyway, but like I say, so just knowing that this is just a physicality of energy, and that it's essential, and there is so much beautiful text written around these two gates, and it's always around just that these are like, when a seed is in the darkness of soil, and that's how this can feel, like darkness, like you can't see the light, like light being literally light, something, so it feels like sunny, right, and pretty, but also lightness in terms of weight. Then it's like, oh, it's not nice. It isn't nice. But the moment I remove my mind, then I'm with it as just pure energy, and it's curious. It's like peculiar. It's I don't know, it's all of a sudden become somewhat indifferent to it because it's actually not bad. I mean, it's just, and so, okay, I suppose this is another thing I need to mention. In my case, at least, I'm lucky enough that I have a life that doesn't require me to push through any of it anymore. I used to up until, I don't know, maybe, don't know, doesn't matter, 7 years or something, maybe. But so I can afford now to just be with that, and the little things I absolutely have to do, they're easily done, not problem. They don't feel like I'm pushing through anything, right? And it's actually kind of, like I say, it's curious and it's interesting. It's still hard. I mean, it's still super hard. These are just moments, like these things that I'm reporting to you with such kind of, oh, it's really fun. It's actually really great. They last for like 5 minutes a day. And then when I'm in that day, right, having that bad day, let's say, the rest I'm still beating myself up. And I mean, I'm speaking about this here, and I was, when I first said that I'm a functioning depressive or whatever, I felt really cringy. Like, God, am I just saying this publicly on a platform? That this video, the idea is to stay here for as long as forever, whatever. So while I'm alive, someone will, in 10 years, really, when I'm like super, have made, thousands of people following me or whatever, I don't know, audience, big audience, that, it's cringy. Like, okay, now it's only 10 people knowing, maybe, or 20 or 100 or something, I don't know. But in next year, it might be thousands. And it's like, wow, it's still like such stigma about depression. But that is all coming from the mind. And astrology feeds that because it's a story-based model and modality. But the story, like any story, can be rewritten. So that's what I was trying to say. When like in my case, you basically, so the kind of another tip, astrological tip, without the things I mentioned about the houses and where you can find these kind of markers for depression. Essentially, any placement can potentially carry heaviness with it, or just difficulty and pain, and that all is a cause of depression, can be, right? So that's why I don't think that's sufficient or even meaningful to have like a marker of depression astrologically. Wherever you're struggling, basically, and that's in any part of your chart, can be and is potentially. The idea is to like I spoke again in another video, like treat it as, because your chart is essentially your playground, your theater, and you're an actor in it, and that's how we have all chosen to come into this plane on earth and all that. And so it's like choosing, how can I find compassion for this part of me, and then let it act itself out through me until it's done with me. And this is also the Plutonic shadow work, which is the same kind of model that you can use for any other part of your chart. So check that out as well, my videos on Pluto. But essentially, it always boils down to, from astrology point of view and from the Western psychiatrists and psychologists like Hollis and Jung and Hillman even, maybe, it's all about acceptance and working with it and finding gold in it, and making art with it, or doing something beautiful with it, or even just like finding somehow beauty in it in whatever way, however way you can, is definitely a meaningful and deeply nourishing and satisfying way of working with those difficult parts of you. And also this new kind of human design, more sort of, I think, futuristic way of working with humans as beings of energy, as well as all kinds of other stuff, is that it's just pure energy, and we need to just remove the story of shame and stigma around feeling those feelings, because that's a story we attach to the energy. The energy is innocent and pure. It's not bad or good, it's just energy. So if we can, that's, I think, going to take, if I had grandchildren, that would be my grandchildren will probably get to that stage. So, but it's good to, if you know that this is where we're headed, you can always remind yourself, and it still does something. It still calms down. It still makes something better than it was a minute before then. And on that note, I am done. I will see you next week. Take care.